Hola, clase. In this chapter, we've been talking about the importance of choosing the right words in Spanish. So, we've been talking about words that have lots of different meanings in Spanish. We've been talking about sinónimos, so synonyms, words or phrases that have similar meanings or meanings that could even be equal. We've been talking about opuestos, so opposites, words that mean the opposite thing. We've even mentioned false cognates, so words that look like they're the same in Spanish and English, but they're actually different. They have completely different meanings. And then just in general, during this chapter, we've been learning about the importance of choosing the right word or phrase in Spanish so that we can really get across exactly what we mean to the people who we're talking about. And so in this video today, we're specifically going to be looking at verbos especiales, so special verbs. And we're going to be talking about how important it is to choose the right verb, to choose the verb that really gets across the meaning that we're trying to express. And we're going to be talking about four verbos especiales, cuatro verbos especiales. Today, we are going to be talking specifically about different verbs that we can use to express the idea of obligation. So in English, we have a lot of different verbs that we can use to talk about things that we are obligated to do or things that we feel like we have to or need to do. And so we can say, I need to do my homework. I must do my homework. I should do my homework. We can use a lot of different verbs to express this same idea of things that we just have to do. And we can use each of those verbs to kind of get across a different meaning to the people who we're talking to, right? I must do my homework is a little bit different than I should do my homework, right? And I can even say though the same thing just in a different way. I can say I should do my homework. And I'm being very serious, and you think that I'm definitely going to end up doing it then. Or I can use air quotes and I can say, I should do my homework. So, am I actually going to do it? No. And so, just by the tone of our voice, we can use these verbs to express different things. We can even say, I ought. I ought to. I don't know that I use that word a lot, right? Maybe some people say I ought to. I ought to go to my friend's party, but I don't know if I'm going to. And then we can even say I have to. I have to go to my friend's party. So lots of different ways in English that we can express the idea of needing to do something. And so as you can imagine, there's also a lot of different ways that we can express the idea of being obligated to do something in Spanish. So today we're going to talk about cuatro verbos especiales, so four specific verbs that we can use in Spanish to get across this idea of feeling obligated to do something. The first verb we're going to look at is necesitar, so need to. If you need to do something, this would be the verb that you're going to use. The thing that I like about a lot of these verbs that express obligation is that all you have to do is conjugate that first verb, and then you can add any verb to it. And the second verb you don't have to do anything to. So it's really easy to just use this necesito más verbo for things that you need to do. Necesito barrer el piso de la cocina. So I need to sweep the kitchen floor. Mañana necesitamos cortar el césped. So tomorrow we need to cut the grass. Mateo necesita hacer sus quehaceres rápidamente. So Matthew needs to do his chores quickly. And you can see in all of these examples that all we had to do was just conjugate our verb necesitar to match our subject. But then the nice thing, like I said, was that second verb, we did not have to do anything to it. We just left it in its infinitive form, all right? So really easy to express the idea of needing to do something in Spanish by just using the verb necesitar and then adding a verb to it. Tener que. So this is have to. So it's not even just that I need to, but I have to. We can use this to express things that we have to do. Tener que más verbo. And so some examples, mañana Juan tendrá que jugar bien en el partido. So tomorrow, Juan has to play well in the game. And you can see that we can conjugate that verb tener in any tense. So this first one's in the future tense. We've got two different ones here at the present tense, and then we even have the past tense. So we can switch back and forth. The next example, Marisol y Eva tienen que comer la comida saludable. So these two girls have to eat healthy food. Tú tienes que ayudar con los animales en la granja. So you have to help with the animals. You have to help take care of the animals at the farm. Ayer yo tuve que ir al supermercado para comer leche. So yesterday I had to go to the supermarket to buy milk, right? And again, just like with the verb necesitar, with the expression tener que, all we have to do is conjugate that first verb tener, use our little connecting word there, que, and then just throw in our second verb. And we don't have to conjugate the second verb. We can just leave it alone. We can leave it in the infinitive form. Deber is the verb that we use in Spanish to express the idea of things that we should do, things that we must, or that we ought to do. And so it has a really easy formation. You just use deber, and then you add whatever verb you want to after it. So tú debes estudiar para el examen. So you should study for the test. Remember, you could translate that to must. You must study, or you ought to study for the test, whatever mood you're in. Debo ser responsable. So I must be responsible. Es tu hermano. Debes ayudarlo. He's your brother. You ought to help him. You should help him. And again, here you can see that all you have to do is conjugate the first verb, deber, and then you just put the infinitive form of the second verb in there because these verbs are working together. So you only have to conjugate the first one. And the last verb that we're going to look at that we can use to express obligation or necessity is IK. It's the one that is kind of the hardest to translate, but it's the easiest to use. So IK means one must. I comes from the verb haber, which usually means to have. So you can see that the definition in English, the way that it gets translated is a little bit weird. But just remember, IK always means one must. IK is really easy to use though, because we never have to change I. So we don't have to conjugate it or anything like that. And we don't even have to conjugate the second verb. So for example, hay que tomar un taxi. We don't have to conjugate I, we don't have to conjugate tomar, and it means one must take a taxi. Another thing that you'll notice here is that IK always gets translated as one must. It is just an impersonal expression. So we don't have a subject here. It's not like I must, you must, he must. It's just one must. So it's just a general statement about things that people in general should do. The next example there, hay que estudiar mucho. One must study a lot. The last one, hay que practicar cada día. And so one must practice every day, or it's necessary to practice every day. Again, just kind of a general statement. And so that's why this expression hay que is just so easy to use because you don't even have to conjugate it or anything. It's really important to point out here that IK has a different meaning than I. So when the word I gets used alone, it means there is or there are. When we use I with K, so when we say IK, it means one must, all right? So when you see I by itself, you'll always use it with nouns. And so when we do that, I've got some examples here of how that works out. So hay un hombre en la calle. There is a man in the street. Hay tres libros en la mesa. So there are three books in on the table. And you can see here that it's really nice when we use I like this because, again, we don't have to change its form. We don't have to change its form to match the noun, like whether it's singular or plural, feminine or masculine. So it is really easy. We can change tenses with the word I. So we can say hubo un hombre en la calle. There was a man in the street. Hubo tres libros en la mesa. There were three books on the table. But otherwise, it's just really easy to use. We can use the word I and then just add our noun afterwards. But it is different than IK, which translates as one must. So be careful that you don't get those mixed up. That's all we're going to cover in this video, just those 4 different verbs that we can use to express obligation or necessity. And so we'll practice these in class. We'll do some translations with these and just practice using the correct one, depending on the meaning that we're trying to convey. Adios.